Nikki Haley did an interview on Fox News with Brett Baer, and she said a number of things that I actually thought were kind of interesting. So I'll play it and give my commentary.
Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee. I would make any bets about that. The party that gets rid of their 80-year-old candidate is the party that's going to win.
Who do you think will be the Democratic nominee?
Well, I've said there's going to be a female president of the United States. It will either be me or it will be Kamala Harris. And if Donald Trump is the nominee, mark my words, we will see a President Kamala Harris. Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period. You don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time to vote for him.
Well, there was a change. Joining us tonight to talk about the presidential campaign, the situation in the Middle East, former presidential candidate, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Governor, thanks for being here.
No, it's great to be with you.
You know, when you talk to somebody about that evolution, obviously you're running for president in one and you're endorsing the former president at the RNC in another. How do you explain that, and where do you see it right now?
Well, if I thought Donald Trump and Joe Biden were the best candidates, I wouldn't have run. I ran because I thought I could do a better job. I ran because I really cared about the next generation, what was going to happen, and all of the issues that I talked about on the campaign trail. But we are where we are. I am a voter, too. I have to make a choice. And when I look at the issues and I look at the differences between the two candidates we've been given, there's no question that I want to see Donald Trump win this election, because we can't have a Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I mean, all you have to do is look at what Kamala Harris has said. She doesn't think illegal immigrants are illegal. She thinks that we should give them free education, free place to live, free health care. Tim Walz thinks socialism is neighborly, and he's gone a step further and thinks we should give them free tuition. They want to raise taxes. You look at everything that's happened with our economy already. We can't afford that. More than anything, from a national security perspective, you can't go to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who have not had the foreign policy experience, and the experience they do have is that they want to expand the Iran deal and give more money to a terrorist organization that says death to America. There's a lot of differences there. We are where we are. And right now, for me, for my family, for those that I love, and as a voter, I think we need to hope that Donald Trump wins this election.
Yeah, a couple of recent polls have shown this bump, that this enthusiasm that this new ticket has received. Reuters has registered voters at 49-47. With Harris leading, and among young voters, a big shift going that way. NPR, PBS, Marist has it 51-48, and with suburban women, Harris leading significantly. Will you go out and campaign for the former president?
Well, I think the first thing you need to ask is, you know, I said that early on, I said a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris. I was always running against Kamala Harris. Republicans should not be surprised that we are now running against Kamala Harris. It was her all the time. There was no way Joe Biden, in the condition that we saw him, could take on the stresses of a presidential election. So, you know, that was something I believed in then. It's why I constantly referred back to her, because I knew that Kamala Harris was the person that we had. And look, what I'll say is it's not an issue of whether I go out and campaign for Donald Trump. He's decided the way he wants to do this. What I will tell you is the Republican Party needs to make a serious shift here. And the first thing is the Republican Party, Donald Trump, people here at Fox, quit complaining that she's not giving an interview. You don't need an interview from Kamala Harris. I take her at her word. I take her at her word that she wants to raise taxes for households over $100,000, that she wants to add a pharmaceutical tax and a health care tax. I take her at her word that she thinks that illegal immigrants should be able to vote and be given driver's licenses. I take her at her word that she wants to ban fracking and kill a bunch of U.S. jobs. Take her at her word.
Despite the fact that the campaign has pushed back and put out statements and saying that her positions have changed.
She has said this. Now, what Donald Trump needs to do is go out there and campaign every single day, telling the American people exactly what Kamala Harris has said. We are 80-plus days out. We need him to win. But you got to go out and do the work. And the one thing Republicans have to stop doing, quit whining about her. We knew it was going to be her. She's not going to give an interview. They're going to hold out as long as they can. That's their right. They can do it. That doesn't mean we can't talk about what she believes in, and we should be getting out there and doing that. And more than anything, this is not an election for just the MAGA vote. Trust me, Donald Trump has that. Republicans need to be fighting for suburban women, for college-educated, for independents, for moderate Republicans and conservative Democrats. They want to be asked for that. The Republican Party needs to go out for them. Talk to them. Talk to them about the fact that Americans, the average American homeowner is now 49 years old.
And do you think that's not happening now? Do you think that this campaign is floundering on that point?
I want this campaign to win. But the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not. You can't win on those things. The American people are smart. Treat them like they're smart.
Do you think the campaign is missing the mark on those things?
I think the campaign needs to focus. That's the main thing. Look, this is a winnable election, but you need to focus. Who is your target market? Your target market is suburban women, college-educated, independents, and conservative Democrats. That's your target market. The target issues are the economy, the fact that Kamala wants to raise taxes, the fact that she's taken money from those that didn't go to college and has given it to those that did, the fact that when Afghanistan fell, the fact that when they lifted sanctions on Iran, the fact that when they, actually said that they would help Israel and then pulled back. Where was Kamala when that happened? She was sitting right next to Joe Biden in the Situation Room. This administration is Kamala Harris's administration. Everything that has happened is hers. So define her on that way. Talk about those issues. Talk about how dangerous it is to expand the Iran deal and get back in it. Talk about how dangerous it would be to do an arms embargo on Israel. Talk about how dangerous it was that Afghanistan fell. And talk about how dangerous it is that you have a presidential candidate and a vice presidential candidate that have never dealt with foreign policy, and their way of dealing with it is we shouldn't treat Russia and China as adversaries. That's what they said.
You were very prescient, as you talked about facing Kamala Harris, and that she eventually would be the nominee. Do you think that it was designed that way? Do you think that the early debate and the whole, they knew, do you think they knew that this was not going to be their nominee?
I don't know, and I don't think it matters. We're in a knife fight right now. Right now, we need to be focused on who we need to be.
But here's why it
not
matters.
so much how we got to this point. I always knew it was going to be Kamala. I was prepared for Kamala. The Republican Party, I think, should have been prepared for Kamala, and I think they are.
But here's why it matters.
The key is talk about it.
New York Times op-ed, there is still a Biden scandal. The people who readily signed up for another 4 years of a 10-4 presidency are still running the government around him. Certainly, it's better for Kamala Harris not to be asked questions, assuming that she ever deigns to be interviewed about whether she participated in that cover-up or was taken in by it. Indeed, it's better for Harris not to have her boss in the political conversation at all. The better to separate her own identity from his presidency's unpopularity. But to the point of this, President Biden is still the president. And there are real questions about, on at least the Republican side, about his capacity to be president. Do you have those same questions about him as president right now?
From the very beginning. It's the reason why I said we should have mental competency tests. That wasn't just a campaign slogan or a joke. I was very serious about the fact that we needed mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75. I think we could do them for anybody over 50. But we have these issues. When you've got the leader of the most important country in the world, and you saw the press conferences, and you saw the shuffling, and you saw his inability to keep on a conversation, we knew that she was going to step in. It wasn't if, it was when. Now we're at the when. So now we're 80-plus days to make sure that there is not a President Kamala Harris. And the way to do that is let's focus, let's get to work, and they need to be out there talking about the issues that 20% care about.
If former President Trump follows your advice and really hits those different demographics and wins this election, and he asks you to serve in his administration, will you?
Well, I genuinely hope he does that, and I genuinely hope he wins. But no, I'm not interested in serving in the administration. I said that on the campaign. This was never about a position for me. This was never about something else. I ran because I love this country so much. My husband's a combat veteran. I'm the daughter of legal immigrants. I have kids that I worry about as they grow up. It was really in that vein that I ran. But now it's in that vein as a voter that I want to see Donald Trump win, because we can't afford to have a President Kamala Harris. It's so much more progressive than Joe Biden has ever been.
Do you think that the first woman president title carries with it a number of votes that people say, you know what, I'm not sure where she stands on these issues, but she would be the first woman president?
I think women and I think Americans are smarter than that. I think what they want is someone who's going to care about them. They want someone who's focused. They want someone who's going to talk about the status of education right now in this country and that our kids are getting dumber, not smarter. They want someone to talk about home ownership and how hard it is to own a home. They want someone to talk about the fact that prices have gone up 19%. And they can't do anything about it. They want someone to talk about how we're going to prevent war.
Is Donald Trump that someone?
He can be. And I want him to be. But
he's not now.
You don't need to be talking about crowd sizes. You don't need to be going on rants about her not doing an interview. You don't need to talk about, things that don't matter. It's not about her. It's about the American people. Talk to them and let them know you need their vote. Don't assume people are going to bend a knee. That is not that 20%. Their ideas are still out. What they like about Kamala is that she's being hopeful. She's talking about freedom. She's talking about a way forward. They don't want a former president talking about the past. Trump knows how to win. He just needs to do it now. He has the ability to do it.
Governor, there's someone inside the Trump campaign, and maybe the former president himself, who's watching this interview saying, wow, she's really good. Why can't we use her in suburban wherever? If he called and said, could you go here to campaign for me? Would you do it?
I mean, he's welcome to call. I have talked to him. He's welcome to do that. They are doing what they think is best, and that is his right to run the campaign he wants to run. He's chosen that. All I'm saying is I want to see them focus, and I want to see them win. We have too much at stake. We have to win this election. And I genuinely hope that he will go out to the 20% of people that are going to decide this election and say, you know what, I need your vote. And I'm going to fight hard to do it. And these are the issues I'm going to fight on.
Governor Haley, Ambassador Haley, thank you very much for the time.
It's always fun.
It's occurred to me that ever since Haley suspended her presidential campaign back in March, she's made very, very few public appearances. I can count 2, maybe 3 interviews, the RNC speech, which I did cover, and the speech that she gave as the new, I think as the Hudson chair, that it was during that speech that she was later asked if she would vote for Trump, or rather, this was the first time that she confirmed she would vote for him in the general election. But outside of that, she's been really quiet. What's interesting is I'm on her fundraiser list. I remember when she gave her interview with CNN, and it was the big thing with CNN. This is her first interview since she suspended her campaign, and it was so blurry, and it was an unlisted video, and I guess her channel changed gears because they put up that original interview with CNN, the RNC speech, and the interview from 2 days ago, the one I just played, I think in 24 hours of each other. It's really weird. But that's just a thing I've noticed. But yeah, she gives this interview and she's feeling strong and vindicated because she told us that this would happen, that Harris would replace Biden as the nominee, that Biden would not serve out another 4-year term. And if you voted for her or Biden, you were voting for the first woman president because Biden would be replaced by Harris. It's like, okay, look, you're not the only person. And this is kind of like a thing. You're not the only person who said this. Cornel West, for example, mentioned that he believed Biden might not make it to 2024. There are other Republicans on Fox as well who said they didn't believe that Biden would be the nominee. Let's not forget, you had Vivek stating that he believed Michelle Obama would take over, a person who wasn't even, never held office, and just total conspiracy theory on his part. But my point I'm making is she makes it sound as though she really was on to something that no one thought of. Now, here's where we get to the interesting stuff. She mentions that the Republicans, and specifically the Trump campaign, needs to change gears, that they need to take all of their stuff they've been using against Harris. Oh, she's not really this ethnicity. Oh, she won't have interviews, and just throw all of it in the trash. And that's fascinating because you're telling the winning campaign, right? The one that thought it was going to have an easy cakewalk victory with Sleepy Joe, that is watching as more and more polls are coming out that show Harris catching up, that it's going to need to, if it wants to win, stop attacking her in these really ridiculous ways. And I ended up agreeing with Haley, and they were asked when she mentioned that Harris's campaign has been uplifting. They've been talking about what they want to do, and in the case of Trump, it's been a lot of vengeance and grievance. And I maintain, because a lot of Trump people don't like to see their own manure, but if you go back and watch Trump rallies from 2016, even some of the 2020 ones, there were policy proposals. Make America Great Again is explicitly designed around this idea that, yeah, things are not going so good right now, but if you vote for whoever is saying this, then there will be this change over the next couple of years that will make things so much better than they were before. And really what's sad about Haley's rhetoric is that she mentions in some cases the statistics. Oh, the average age of a homeowner is 49. But then it's like, okay, well, lady, are you going to support raising the minimum wage? Are you going to support lowering the cost of housing? I mean, I just think it's funny. These people, when they're trying to make one side seem like they're just demons on earth, they will bring up statistics that, are affecting people, that in many cases are correct, but then not have any solution to actually deal with those things. And then sometimes they just say stuff that doesn't even actually mean anything. Oh, kids are going to school but getting dumber. Are you talking about the curriculum being messed up? Are you speaking about, I could agree with the idea that a lot of schools need to be reformed in terms of what they teach students and how much they teach. But again, there's no specifics given here. So it's just more worthless talk. But going back to her comments about Harris, I enjoy seeing this interview because you look at the one that Vivek had, you look at the one that Sarah Huckabee Sanders had, and what tends to happen with a lot of these Trump bootlickers is that they'll sit there and just keep hyping them up. We're gonna win. We're gonna win. That's why they have to file all of these frivolous charges. He's the only person in history who could get 91 criminal charges and actually convince millions that this is all just a witch hunt. But this is what makes her stand out so much, because she's telling them, if you guys actually want to be able to pull this victory off, and it seems like your victory is getting more and more faint of happening each week with all this new polling that's coming out, you're going to need to not do what you're doing. Now, of course, they won't listen to her, and I'm not surprised, because that's just how these people are when they decide something. It's very rare to see them shift course. Like I said, they were caught off guard by Biden being switched out with Harris. That's why instead of actually, because my thing is, if it's so easy to say why Harris is bad, right, according to them, they should be able to tell us. They don't need to, whether she gives interviews or not, just go on TV, call her, socialist, and, do all this stuff that Mark Levin and Bill O'Reilly like to do every day. And just, it should be easy. But they're not really coming at her with anything effective. Again, interviews, her ethnicity. You had J.D. Vance talking about Tim Walz deciding to not go to a foreign country or not deploy. Just stuff that has nothing, damn near at all, to do with policy, because they have nothing to run on. They're just, again, it's the vengeance and grievance campaign. Now, the other part of this that's fascinating is where she mentions that she would not be interested, while she wants Trump to win, she would not be interested in the cabinet position, which I find extremely confusing because it's like, okay, the idea behind her saying that she would vote for Trump and then later giving her speech at the RNC, as I interpret it, along with a lot of other people who, saw a lady who ran against Trump in this really fierce kind of, she even said voting for Trump was like suicide for the country. So this is someone who, kept hammering the idea of voting for him is a bad thing. Don't do it. He's washed up. She called him weak in the knees on Ukraine. I mean, I remember all this stuff like it was yesterday because it's still fresh in my mind. So when she pivoted and endorsed him, the theory that everybody had was two things. She either wants to resume her public career in some way by maybe getting in better graces with Trump so that if she decides to run again in 2028 after, presuming that he loses or, even if he wins, whatever, he won't be able to do it again in 4 years, most likely, then she won't have to worry about his scorn or the scorn of his supporters. Or she's doing this so that she can get a cabinet position. Maybe she can become Secretary of State, right? Because her whole thing is that she was the UN ambassador, which really is not, she acts like she was Secretary of State even though she wasn't, is my point. But we thought she did that with a clear goal of, I'm going to try to get some new job that I can, boost my resume with and then try to run for president again later at a time where Trump doesn't have such a stranglehold over the party. But instead, she endorsed him, gave this RNC speech that probably was one of the more effective speech. Not in the sense that she like changed hearts and minds, but it certainly was more memorable than a lot of the other ones there. And after doing this complete reversal, the most Trump is going to be able to get out of you is you're going to campaign for him if he calls you. Like, he certainly doesn't need her to campaign in South Carolina because he beat her in her home state. So if you don't want a cabinet position and you can't run for any offices in South Carolina because they're all taken by other Republicans, I'm kind of confused by what her strategy is. I hope that Hudson chair job is real fun because otherwise you're gonna be writing your political obituary here. Now the other part of this, and this I guess a good closing idea. I insisted several months back. This is like 3-4 months ago, that Haley would have been one of Trump's better VP picks. And the reason I say that is because after Haley dropped out of the race, there were still Republicans that were voting for her, whether it was because they liked her, were just sick of Trump, whatever the reason was. And I thought that by picking her, Trump would be showing some maturity, right? People insult each other in primaries in nasty ways, but that's just how modern politics is, unfortunately. And he would be getting someone that looked as though they were not going to try to overturn the election results or participate in something like that if they lost. Now, there were some Trump people who tried to say, oh, well, this would mean that his supporters would revolt. You had Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that, for example. I thought that was complete nonsense. I think Trump's supporters will vote for him really no matter who the VP is, other than maybe Noam, and that's only if they're really into dogs. So I was convinced that she would be a very good pick for him. I didn't think she would get picked, but I thought he'd be making a good choice in picking her. And now that we've had Vance for, what has it been, almost a month now? I think it has been a month. It was like July 15th, July 4th. I stand by that. I think she would have been a better VP pick than Vance. And if they lose this election, which I'm leaning toward them losing, it could go either way, but I lean towards Harris winning. If they lose this election, much of it will come down to not doing the things that Haley said during this interview. I think they're going to keep attacking Harris over stuff that doesn't matter. Like, people are not clamoring for more interviews with her because the people who already are going to vote for her have decided that. The people who are already not going to vote for her have decided that. Really, the only interviews that she's required to do are these debates, which aren't coming up for another month. there's no one who's sitting around at home barely able to afford food or housing or sitting up in student loan debt wondering about Harris's ethnicity. Is she really this race or that? Stuff that doesn't matter. But it seems that Trump and Vance are going to double down on that. And it's probably going to cost them. Now, like I said, Haley is one of the most confusing examples of a politician I've seen in modern times, because who in their right mind would endorse somebody for president right after they vociferously attacked them during the primary, and then even though they claim we agree on more than we disagree, oh, he wants me for a cabinet job? Nah. I don't know what she's thinking. Like that's the only part of this that has me confused. I'm trying to figure out what is her lane here if she is explicitly against having a job in his cabinet and can't run for any offices in South Carolina. Those are the two things that have me confused. But the rest of the rest of this is stuff I mostly agree with in terms of just, they should listen to her when it comes to just trying a different strategy, because this race is not the same that it was back in June and May and all the months prior. You have a new candidate. Whether you didn't like the way that she was picked or not doesn't matter. That primary that the Democrats had was, nonsense anyway. Barely anybody voted. So, yeah, this is the Republicans' race to lose, and it'll be real fun to come back to this interview after the election results and see how correct Haley was.